Alright guys, this is going to be a review on some grease guns. And the reason I'm doing this video is if you go out and you start shopping for a grease gun, it's kind of difficult to find detailed information on some of these units. So let me begin by telling you that I purchased this grease gun probably a little more than a year ago, and it's a Lincoln. And it's a Lincoln model 1134 heavy duty pistol grip grease gun. This gun replaces one that I had for many years, and eventually the old one gave up the ghost and there was no fixing to it. It was time to repair it. So I shopped around. I'm a Amazon fan, and I found this guy. It had pretty good reviews. It was amongst the top of the line guns available on Amazon from Lincoln, and I wanted a good quality gun that I wouldn't have to hassle with. So I bought it. Like I say, I've had it about a year, used it about a year for general purpose mechanic type work, automobiles, trailers, anything, lawnmowers, anything where you have to shoot just regular cheap grease into the Zerk fittings. But a few weeks ago I had some specialized lubrication that had to be done. One of the jobs I had was lubrication of some machine parts, and the manufacturer called for a special lubrication a few cuts above just the standard cheap automotive grease. And another application that I had was to lubricate a four-wheeler that uses synthetic grease. My grease guns have always contained just regular old cheap grease. So I had a couple of choices. I could either try to purge this gun that I use for general lubrication probably 95-98% of the time, get all the standard cheap grease out of it and load it up to do my specialty lubrication jobs, and then have to repeat the process when I went to another type of lubrication. Or I could just get a few cheapy grease guns and keep the specialty grease in a couple of the cheap guns and keep the one that I use all the time in kind of the high dollar gun. When I went out looking for another cheaper version of the Lincoln gun, the information was kind of scarce. So I wanted to do a review and compare the 1134 heavy duty and the 1133, this one right here, which I just purchased recently, so you can know what the difference are between these two. There's actually not a lot of good information on the Lincoln website. I went out there first before I bought this gun to try to find some information, and there wasn't actually enough detailed information on their website for me to make any distinction, so that's why I'm doing this video. This is another gun that I purchased off of Amazon. It was a little more than 20 bucks. It got good reviews, so I'm going to talk about this one too while I have everything set up. So you folks in the market for a grease gun, this might give you some good options, a little information that's not readily available. So let's begin with the 1134, which is the heavy duty kind of pro consumer grade, I guess, marketed by Lincoln. Now, this gun has a cast body. It has a formed metal handle that's riveted onto the body. The nice thing I really like about this gun is it has a combination bulk fill nozzle as well as a bleeder nozzle, so you can get the air bled out of the pump when you have to open it up to replace the cartridge, or when you decock the gun, and I'll talk about that in a little while. So cast body, this handle is cast, it's part of the body. This is all one piece, this whole casting, formed or stamped handle riveted on, bulk fill valve, as well as an air bleeder valve. That's the 1134. Okay, this is the 1133. This is a step down from the 1134. Now what you notice right away on this one is the pump section of the gun is cast, but the handle is not cast onto this main body of the unit. It's actually another piece of formed metal that's riveted on, as well as the back handle that operates the pump piston. So that's how they saved a few bucks. This is all stamped, pressed metal. This is cast. Looks like pretty good quality stuff. Other than that, the rest of the gun is all the same. The body of the gun is the same. And now we go to the, I don't know, this was $23, $24 version by, get this up here so you can see it, Lumax heavy duty deluxe grease pistol with 18-inch flex hose. Now right away, when you pick this gun up, there's a noticeable difference in weight. This is a lightweight. The main part of the pump mechanism is cast, but it almost seems like it may be a lower grade material. The casting isn't quite as pretty or nicely finished, and you can see it's shiny. I'm guessing it's probably some type of cast aluminum or aluminum alloy. This is probably as well, but the fit in the finish is a bit nicer on the Lincoln gun. Same cost savings they've done here. This is stamped pressed metal. This whole mechanism is all stamped, pressed, riveted together, and that operates the pump piston right there. Nothing wrong with it, just not as heavily constructed. Now the one feature on this less expensive gun that the Lincoln doesn't have is it's got this little lock tab here for the grease cartridge plunger. And I'm going to see if I can demonstrate this. You can actually pull this back partially and it locks. This is a little binding lever, so you don't have to fully retract the spring-loaded piston mechanism that forces the grease up into the pump mechanism. You can just retract it partially just to take a little pressure off the grease cartridge, and that helps prevent grease leaking, especially in the warm weather. And when you want to use the gun, you simply press it, lever down, and it returns spring pressure to the cartridge. Now I'm going to talk a little bit. Let me just, before I go on, let me just demonstrate how the Lincoln mechanism works. This also is a spring-loaded piston that keeps some pressure on the grease in the grease cartridge when you're using the gun. But in order to release the pressure off the grease cartridge, this one you have to pull it all the way out. It's very difficult because this gun actually seems to have a very good, I'm going to have to go off camera a minute here to retract this, and it is a bear. Okay. Let me see if I can get a close-up of this. Usually the rod sits over in this position so it can travel into the grease cartridge, and there's a little notch cut in the end of the tube here, and when you want to release the pressure from the plunger, you have to pull this rod out and then catch that little notch. So while I've got this done, let me show you the inside of the gun here. I'm going to remove this lots of threads. I'm going to remove this end cap here and give you a peek at this. And I don't know how well the video is going to pick it up. Yeah, you can see that. See the spring all coiled up in there. When you release the rod from this holding notch, this spring is what pushes this gasketed plunger into the body and forces the grease up to the pump. One thing I should mention on this particular gun, I don't know if it is true with this model. Some of these guns allow you to flip this gasket around so you can bulk load the cartridge, and it will force the grease up to the front of the gun to the pump. This one, I honestly don't know. I haven't looked at the instructions because I never bulk load my grease guns. But this one almost looks like it's riveted in place. So this one, let's see if you can just flip it up. I think. We'll see. Yes. I wouldn't swear to it, but I'm guessing that that's probably how you handle bulk loading the grease reservoir. That little gasket just flips up, and when you're using a cartridge, it just flips back down again. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure that's probably how it works. Let's see. Let me talk just a little bit about retracting this plunger. I have found through the years that if you leave in the warm weather, if you load one of these guys up with grease and you leave the plunger pressure in the cartridge, when the weather warms up, the grease tends to thin out and you'll get grease sneaking out all over the place. So through the years I've developed a habit of, when I'm done greasing, I'll retract this plunger and just lock it in place. Now, I don't really know long term what effects that will have on the spring. But like I said, the one that I just replaced I've had for many, many years, and the problem was not with the spring, it was actually with the seals. So you'll have to decide yourself whether or not you want to keep the plunger retracted, but like I said, I learned through the years that that's the best way to store a grease gun, especially in the summertime. One thing that I missed before I sign off here, this is the 1134. This is the kind of the heavy duty version with the fully cast back handle here. Bulk filler nozzle, most folks probably don't use that unless you're running a garage. Most folks use a cartridge. There's a grease cartridge of a little specialty grease that I'm fixing to load these up with. And to release any trapped air when you put a new cartridge in, you just give this a little spin until it burps, and that's how you get the air out. Now on the 1133, this is not a stock item here. This is a valve that I had in my junk box, and it happened to fit. It's I believe it's 1/8 inch NPT thread. What actually came in the gun, and I've got it tightened in there, it's just this little plug right here. And this is how you burp this particular gun. This valve assembly isn't here. Like I say, I just toss that in there to make it easier to burp the gun. This little plug usually is screwed right down into the casting, and when you want to burp the gun, you take a little Allen wrench, you loosen it up just enough to burp the air out and tighten it back down again. That's the 1133. This is the Lumax, and they took a little different approach. It's actually kind of impressive for a cheap gun. They have the bulk fill nozzle over on one side, and if you're not familiar with that, like I say, most people don't use it, and most mechanics will know what that is, so I'm not even going to go into it. But they have a nice little finger valve here. So when you load a new cartridge up, it's actually spring loaded, and you just give this a little mash to burp the air out as you're pumping the gun, and release it, and she seals up. So I don't know how well this one is going to hold up. It's the fit and finish looks pretty good on it, and I'm kind of impressed that they use the little lever trick for the cartridge plunger, and they've got a separate burp valve and a separate bulk fill valve. So those are very nice features for the money. This was, like I say, this was probably 22, 23 bucks at the time I bought it. So now you know the difference between a Lincoln 1133, a Lincoln 1134, and the Lumax. Check them out. I think that'll do it for this one, guys. Until next time.